Hello, this is your host, Austin Hopkins, and welcome to the Introvert Leader Podcast. Welcome to episode 20. I'm excited to have you guys here today. I am filming in my new little home office recording studio here in AZ, and just excited to have you guys here and be back on video. So to kick things off, I want to jump into what I've been into recently. So music-wise, I've been listening to a guy named Brent, F-A-I-Y-A-Z. Don't even know how to pronounce his last name, but he is R&B/rap, I would say, is kind of his style, and really been enjoying his stuff. And the song that I have been playing on repeat is called Been Away by him. So listen to it, thank me later. You're not going to regret it. He is a vibe, as I always say, and really enjoying his music. Okay, so switching to YouTube. You guys know I love YouTube, and who I've been into recently is a guy named Andy Cooks. So he is a food YouTuber who basically used to be a chef, or maybe still is, but films really kind of fun videos with his wife, cooks a whole bunch of different things from all different ethnicities and different type of cuisines, and just really love his kind of style. And he's got a lovely Aussie accent. So if you're into Aussie accents, which I am, you're going to love his videos. Highly recommend checking it out. Okay, moving on to what I've been watching recently. I went to the theater down the street with the wifey and saw a new movie called The Creator. So this one is literally about the future of our world and what it would look like if AI continues on the trend that we think it might. So it kind of showed worst case scenario, best case scenario, and really kind of got me to think about what would a potential future look like with AI. Is it a good future? Is it a bad future? Does it make our life better? Are there, different ethical dilemmas that pop up? And so really enjoyed that. Solid actors. I'd highly recommend checking that out. I think you're going to enjoy it. Kept me entertained the whole way. All right. Now I want to transition to a quote to set up the episode for today. So here is the quote, and it's by a business leader called Ken Blanchard. And the quote is, "Feedback is the breakfast of champions." So pretty simple, but I thought that was good because today's episode is all about how to give your boss feedback. Something that maybe some of you have tried. I know I definitely have, and so I'm excited to dive into that and give you all of my thoughts on giving your boss some feedback. So in just a second, we'll jump into that. But before we do, I'm introducing a new segment. So today's segment is listener Q's and A's, folks. And the first question comes from a guy named John in Washington. So here's his question. He asked, how do I lead someone who used to be my peer? How do you make that transition? I think it's a really good question, and it's something that I know I've been through myself. So it can be a little weird if you're peers or friends with someone, and then you're suddenly thrust into a leadership position, right? You're now their boss, you have some authority over them, but you still have that relationship. You still have that previous relationship that you maybe have built, and you don't want to sour that. So here's really what I would do is, number one, I would not change my style all that much when I went into that new leadership position. So if I was previously their peer, what I would do is I would pretty much act the same when I went into that leadership role, right? The only things that I would probably change is maybe I wouldn't talk about as many non-work related things. And, of course, you want to make sure that you're not talking about inappropriate things at work. But at the end of the day, you're still the same person. They're the same person as well. And, you may have some issues, but if there's some respect there and you guys are both focused on the work and adding value, at the end of the day, you may be feeling something inside, but there's not much you can do about that. Treat the employees the same way. Make sure that you're listening to them. Don't come in authoritative or super bossy. Come in really soft, gentle, making sure that you're kind of just learning, and take their lead, right? If they're uncomfortable by it and they want to have a conversation, great. Have a conversation about how it is to be their boss now. Get that awkwardness out of the way. But I'm confident if you come in the right way, if you treat the relationship like it always was, something you care about, the other person, you're going to be just fine. So really, really good question. And my ask for all of you guys that's listening is, I want to hear what other questions you have. So this is your opportunity, your moment, whatever you want to hear about, whatever you want me to answer, I would be happy to do so. So send me an email to theintrovertleader@gmail.com so I can talk about all of your questions, answer them, and hopefully give you a couple strategies that you can take back to your work, into your career, and take it to the next level. So love that new segment. Thank you again, John, for the great question. Okay, what I want to do now is I want to transition and talk about why discussing feedback and giving it to your boss. So there's a couple of things. Number one, it's something that I know I have gone through and that many other people I've talked with have either wanted to give feedback or have seen other people do it and maybe were too scared to do it. So my hope is that by the end of this episode, you're going to have a few different strategies, a few different ways that you can make sure that you're ready to go and how to approach that conversation with your boss. Because if you do it the right way, hopefully they're going to grow, you're going to grow through the experience, I'm sure, and it's probably going to improve the working relationship. So that's my goal. It's really simple. I want to give you the strategies. I want to tell you about the things you can get feedback on, the things you can't get feedback on, the preparation, what you do afterwards. So all that, we're going to break it down in the episode. Okay, so there's a couple of consequences, though, of staying silent. A lot of times, I remember in my career, I thought the best strategy was to just not say anything. Maybe to ignore it, to hope it got better, just hope it went away, right? But that's not going to work. So a couple of things that can happen if you choose to stay silent and not do anything about it is, number one, you're going to have some frustration and resentment, right? There's nothing worse than wishing you did something, wishing you had the courage to speak up, but not doing it. And you're going to feel that regret. And you guys have heard me talk about it before. I think regret is one of the worst things we can feel as humans. So my goal in my career has always been to avoid that. How do I avoid regret? And a lot of times that means taking action, doing something that makes you feel a little uncomfortable, but that will pay off later on. So regret, frustration, definitely something that you don't want to experience. Another one is you're going to be limiting your growth. So having uncomfortable, tough conversations during your career is a must. It's something that you have to do. The more you run away from those things, the more they're going to get bigger, the worse it's going to feel, and you're going to continue to run away because it works, right? You think it works. You can run away, you can pretend it will not happen, ignore it, and that gives you a momentary good feeling. In the moment, it feels good. But then in a few hours, the next day, you're back to where you were. So you limit your growth when you avoid having the tough conversations that you know you need to have. Take it from a guy who spent the early part of his career avoiding those conversations. Once I started tackling those, going at them head on, not running away from them, things got better. It was uncomfortable. I don't want to sit here and pretend like, you're going to feel amazing doing that. But the uncomfortableness is going to be outweighed by the pride and the confidence you get from having a tough conversation. So staying silent, never the move. You don't want to do that. You're going to face regret, frustration. You're going to limit your growth. No bueno. So we talked about why staying silent is no good. I want to transition and talk about why feedback matters, and specifically giving your boss feedback. So 3 things. Number 1, it builds confidence, like I said just a second ago. Doing things that are hard and uncomfortable builds your confidence. And sometimes people get that crossed in their brain and they think, well, that confidence comes from other things. I believe in my career and what I've seen from others is that doing the hard things, doing the uncomfortable things, getting out of the comfort zone, that's what builds confidence. It just does, because you're trying something new. You're stretching yourself. You're putting yourself out there. You're basically telling yourself, your brain, hey, I didn't think I could do this, but I did it. Great. What else can I handle? So building confidence, huge benefit of giving feedback to your boss. Another one is it gives your boss a chance to grow or change. I really believe that our duty as employees is not only to just worry about ourselves, but take care of your boss too, right? And if your boss has a big gap, a big deficiency, giving them the opportunity to grow, to change is key. So don't just assume that they're going to figure it out or assume that they'll get better. Give them that opportunity. Make sure that you are bringing it to their attention, because maybe, just maybe, they didn't even know they were doing something wrong. And if no one tells them, they're going to continue to do it. But if someone tells them, if they're a decent human being, a decent boss, they're at least going to try to get better. So I think it's really, really important to give your boss a chance to grow and change. And of course, giving feedback can lead to change. So that's the other benefit, right? It can actually lead to change. I know I've had employees give me feedback and I took it seriously. And I would then try over the next couple of weeks, over the next few months, or even over the next year to implement whatever that feedback is. I wanted to not let my employees down. I wanted to get better. So it actually forced me to change. So I think that's another reason why feedback is so important, is it actually will lead to change in many cases. Again, I'll say that with a caveat. If you're dealing with a bad boss, a boss who has no self-awareness, probably not going to lead to change, but we can talk about that at another time and kind of dive into what you do in that situation. So I want to transition now and give you some examples of the things that are appropriate to give feedback on and the things that are inappropriate to give feedback on. So the things that I believe are totally okay to give feedback on are really kind of categorized into three different things. Number one would be job performance. So things like communication, their leadership, their task management, how do they run their business, right? Is their leadership getting in the way? Is it becoming too micromanagey? Is it becoming too hands-off? Totally okay to give feedback on those type of things. Another one would be processes, routines, patterns, things like that go on within the team. So let's say, for example, your boss has this weird habit of setting up weekly team meetings at 4:30 on a Friday, right? Probably not something that is going to get the best out of the team. And I think it's totally appropriate to give some gentle feedback to your boss around the idea of changing that to a different time. So processes, routines, totally okay to bring up. Another one would be team dynamics and collaboration. So are there issues within the team? Are people not gelling well? Are people getting their feelings hurt? Are there disagreements? Totally okay to bring those kind of things to your boss's attention. And hopefully, if they're a good boss, they're going to take that to heart and actually try to help change those things. So those are some of the things that I think are totally okay to give feedback on. I want to tell you now the things that I wouldn't give feedback on, the things that I would stay away from, the things that aren't really worth giving feedback on because it's too risky. So a couple of things. Number one is personal stuff. So personal traits. You do not want to be giving your boss feedback on personal traits. Maybe they are someone who is very, very outgoing and you're not outgoing, and sometimes that gets on your nerves. I wouldn't bring that up. They're not going to change their personality type, and it's best to not bring up an uncomfortable situation that can't be fixed. Another one that I wouldn't bring up is personal stuff like their appearance, political views, religion. Keep that stuff out of work. That is not appropriate. You don't want to bring that up. You're not their friend, you're their employee, so those kind of things really have no bearing on your job performance or how you do your work. And then the last one is you don't want to give feedback to your boss that shows you don't trust them or their leadership. So you probably don't want to go to your boss and say, hey, I don't think you're a good leader. I don't think you know how to be a manager. Those are the things I would not say to your boss, because you would be instilling a sense of dissatisfaction on a whole nother level that they would really, really not take well. And if I had an employee come up to me and say, hey, you don't know how to be a leader, that would not only probably crush me, but I would probably take offense to that. Right? So I would not talk about things, big things like that show you don't trust their leadership. Stay away from that. Pick something smaller, something more manageable, something specific they could actually change. Okay, so we talked about what are the stuff that you can give feedback on, what's the stuff you can't give feedback on. Let's transition, talk a little bit about preparation. So I really believe all these big moments in your career can go so much smoother if you have the right preparation. Right? If you've put in time and energy and thought ahead of time to think through what you want to say, how you want to say it, what your goal is, what will go wrong if it doesn't happen the way you think it will, these things are going to set you up for success. So don't just go into this feedback conversation with your boss without preparation. The three things that I've always done to prepare for these kind of conversations are as follows. So number one, pull together some examples. So think about specific things that you can bring to your boss's attention. You don't want to just say, hey, I wish you were better at leading meetings. That's too general, right? You may want to give a specific example and say, hey, during the last meeting we had, I realized that the team wasn't really super engaged, Greg. And I'm thinking that's because we're not giving enough time to actually ask questions of the whole team. So really specific things that you can actually go through with your boss. You don't want to just say, hey, you're not good at leading meetings. You want to give them a specific example of when that happened. So the date, the time, that kind of stuff is really important. The next one is practice, right? Don't just assume you're going to be ready to go the day of, because this is uncomfortable. You're going to be doing something that you probably haven't done before. And my advice is practice. That is my secret go-to weapon. I practice. Anytime there's something big in my life, I'm practicing. Who do you practice with? Grab a spouse, grab a friend, someone, and kind of just go through those things. Say, hey, here's what I want to get feedback on. Pretend you're my boss. Tell me what you think. It's going to get your confidence up. They're going to be able to as well tell you, hey, you didn't sound genuine here, or you didn't sound authentic. You rushed here. You didn't cover that. So practice with a spouse, practice with a friend, practice with a coworker if it's appropriate. It's going to set you up for success. The next one is schedule that conversation. Don't surprise your boss and just come up to them and bum rush them, bombard them with some feedback. That's not going to feel good for them. They're not going to be mentally prepared. So schedule it. So how I would do that is make sure that you give them a heads up. Say, hey, I'd love to chat about this with you in a couple of days. Or, hey, there's something that's been on my mind, Greg, that I wanted to bring to your attention. Can we carve out 15 minutes next week to chat? Give them a heads up that you have something that's been on your mind, that's been bothering you, that you want to chat about. Right? I probably wouldn't give them a heads up that's like 3 weeks in advance, because then you're going to be just having them kind of freak out, stew about it, and give them too much time to think about what could be said or what you're going to bring to their attention. So schedule it, but try to make it within just a few days from then. Max, I would say a week. So preparation, pull together examples, make sure that you practice, make sure you schedule it. If you do those 3 things, you're going to be prepared. All right, so we talked about the preparation. Now I want to transition to the actual act of giving feedback. What is that actually going to look like when you give that feedback to your boss? So I've broken it down into 4 things. Be respectful, be specific, be collaborative and positive, and be prepared for the reactions. So the first one, so be respectful. This is obvious, but I think it needs to be said. If you go into this conversation with disrespect in your mind, with a intention of catching them or yelling at them or teaching them a lesson, it's not going to go well. This is a very delicate situation to give your boss feedback, especially if they have a big ego. So be respectful. Come in very gentle, very respectful, with an intention of being collaborative and positive, which leads me to my next one. Be collaborative and positive. Don't go in there and just tear them up to shreds. Go in there with a strategic thing you want to talk about, but also be prepared to tell them some of the things that they're doing well. So I always like to kind of give a feedback sandwich. So what that might sound like is, Greg, first off, I want to say thank you so much for, allowing me to have a couple of minutes on your calendar to talk about what's been on my mind. Recently, I've noticed that I'm just not getting the support that I would hope when it comes to our new sales goal. I'm hoping that I can get a little bit more support from you around resources and things like that, because most recently, I haven't had the resources or the people in order to hit the sales goals that you mentioned. Again, thank you so much, Greg, for listening. I think we're doing a lot of other cool things as a team. This is just one area that's been stressing me out. So that's that feedback sandwich. So something kind of well, something they need to work on, something they're doing kind of well. The next one is be specific. So again, I mentioned this a second. Don't just say, I want you to get better at supporting me. Give a specific example of how they can get better. Does that mean that they need to check up on you more? Do you need to have more frequent communication? Is there something else that you need to do to be in a better relationship with them? But be specific. That's really, really important, because people can't fix things that they don't understand. They can't fix things that aren't specific, that they don't have clear examples. I think the next one for me is be prepared for some weird reactions. So I've given feedback to different bosses over my career, and sometimes that feedback is taken incredibly well. They listen, they nod their head, they take notes, and then they try to take action. But I've also had bosses give me some crazy responses. So here are a couple of the ones that I've seen in the past. Be prepared for your boss to get defensive. There are some people that don't like to get feedback, and their tendency or their common reaction is to get defensive, even if there's something that they've done wrong. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for them to disagree with you. You might give some feedback, and they may completely disagree. You may say that you don't feel like their communication is good, and they may say, I have the best communication in the world. You're absolutely wrong, Austin. Okay, be prepared for that. And then the last one is, and I hope this is something you don't have to run into, but be prepared for them to throw it back at you. I have seen, and I've given a boss feedback where instead of listening, they then chose to attack me during that conversation. It didn't feel good. I wouldn't say this was a common experience, but this was a very poor leader who was not in the right role, and he was basically lashing out. So keep that in mind. There could be some weird reactions, but as long as you're prepared for that, I think you're going to be okay, right? For me, a lot of times it's if I'm mentally prepared for the worst, when the worst happens, I'm not overwhelmed because I kind of expected it. I kind of worked those things through in my brain. So that's really the top 4 things that I would do as you're actually giving feedback to your boss. So what I thought would be kind of interesting is doing a little role play. So I would actually show you what that might sound like. So I've used role plays in my career ever since I can remember. And the reason why role plays work and the reason why I like them is it actually gets you to practice. So I mentioned earlier about the value of practicing. Well, a role play is just practice. So I want to give you a little scenario, and I'm going to kind of break down how I would give my boss feedback in this scenario. So here's the scene. Your boss has been leaving you out of some important communication. There's this big project, this big initiative going on at work, but multiple times in the last month, your boss has failed to include you on important information via email. So they've either sent it to someone else or they haven't sent it out at all, but they are basically withholding information that you think you need in order to accurately and effectively support the project, support the initiative. So you've been getting frustrated by this. So one day your boss is walking down the hallway and you would basically take over from here. So this is the start of the role play. So, hey, Greg, hey, good to see you, Greg. I was hoping, can I grab like 30 minutes on your calendar tomorrow? There's something that's been on my mind that's been kind of bothering me, and I feel like I owe it to you to have a conversation. Your boss is most likely going to say, yep, no problem. And you'll go ahead and get that meeting scheduled. So now let's fast forward to the actual day of. So let's say you have walked into that room, you're ready to go. So here's what I would probably say. Hey, Greg, thank you so much for grabbing a few minutes together so we can chat. As I mentioned a couple of days ago, I've been a little frustrated. As we know, we have that big data project right now where we are ensuring that everything is, squared up and that we really have all the data points from our clients that we need. But I feel like the communication has not been great. So there's been 2 or 3 times this month where I know other folks within the corporation have been getting emails around the project and updates and status trackers, things like that. I haven't been getting that. And I guess I'm curious, is there any reason why I haven't been getting that? Wait for their response. And, they may come up with excuses, but what I would go from there is just say, hey, Greg, again, I want to say thanks for listening. My hope is that going forward, you'd be able to include me on these type of emails. I want to make sure that I show up well for you, show up well for our department, and really make sure we hit this project out of the water. So again, thank you so much for chatting. I really appreciate it. Simple as that. So started by thanking him for his time, told him what he was doing that was not right, forgot to send me emails, wasn't including me. I asked him a question because maybe there is a reason he wasn't including me on that. So don't just assume you know everything that's in your boss's mind. And then again, I thanked him for his time at the end. So again, that feedback sandwich. But that's how I would run it. I would make it really clear, really direct, specific. I would be collaborative. I would be respectful. And hopefully, like I said, if you have a decent boss, they're going to be understanding. Maybe it's just an oversight. I know as a leader, there have been times where I thought I was doing the right thing, but I completely forgot to do something. I completely messed up, and I didn't even know I messed up. And unless my employee had brought it to my attention, I would just kind of go through life assuming I was great in that one area. So again, that's how I would break it down, and that hopefully that role play gives you a little bit of more of a concrete example of how to do it. So let's say you've done the hard work. You've had that conversation. You've given them the feedback. Well, what do you do next? Right? Some folks might think, well, that's the end of it. You kind of just forget about it. They're going to change. Everything's going to be honky-dory, sunshine and rainbows. I'm sorry to say that's probably not going to happen. There's going to be a couple of things that you're going to need to do. So number one is I always like to send an email. Send them a thank you email. This is another way to get that on their radar of the areas that maybe they weren't perfectly hitting your expectations. So The email could be short. Thanks again for your time yesterday. I'm confident that you and I are going to come up with a great plan to work together. Or, hey, thanks so much for chatting yesterday, Greg. I really appreciate you listening to my concerns. Again, this puts it on their radar, shows that this was actually important to you and that you're following up, that you're going to make sure that this relationship continues to get better. So send that little email. Next thing you got to do is observe your boss. So look for those things and look to celebrate when they do something right. If they start doing something that you've asked them to do, recognize that. They're going to want to chase that feeling and do it more and more. So I think it's really important to observe your boss and those behaviors to see if they get better. And then from there, it's rinse and repeat. So if you notice in a month from them that they didn't get better, in 2 weeks they didn't get better, 6 months they didn't get better, have another conversation with them. Try it again. Bring it to their attention. Again, sometimes these things don't get fixed in one conversation. It takes multiple conversations sometimes. So don't be afraid to observe and then follow up as necessary. So hopefully you feel a little bit more confident on how to give your boss feedback. It's a little scary. I don't want to lie to you and act like it's going to be the easiest thing in the world, but I'm telling you, these tough conversations, these awkward, uncomfortable conversations are the way to go. Take it from a guy who hates confrontation. The times that I've chose to do that respectful conversation and have a little confrontational moment, I felt awkward in the moment. I felt uncomfortable, but I tell you what, I left those conversations so pumped up. The chest is big. I'm feeling great because I did something hard. I did something I didn't think I could do. So let me transition and actually tell you about a story, an example of where I actually did this. So I have this boss, and I've talked about him before. He wasn't a good leader. He just was not a good fit for the role that he was in. And unfortunately, at his level, his deficiencies affected a large number of people, right? So if you're a leader of a team and you only have 2 or 3 people on your team and you're not the greatest leader, at the end of the day, you're not affecting a huge group of people. There's just 2 or 3 people that are going to be suffering. Still not good, but it's not as big of a deal in my opinion. Well, this guy was a VP, and he had quite a few folks, close to 30, under his leadership umbrella, if you will. And for a while there were some things that were really bothering me, things that I couldn't get over. And the 3 things that really stood out to me that I remember is, number 1, he wasn't supporting me and my department. He was not being my advocate or my department's advocate. And there was a lack of information sharing. So it almost felt like information was being withheld, information that I needed. So for a while, I ignored this. I thought, you know what? He'll figure it out. He'll get better. And then I went from ignoring it to kind of just denial. Well, it's only affecting me. It's no big deal. It's not really affecting everybody else in my department. And then I started hearing from people in my department. I started hearing how they were frustrated about the lack of information sharing, or how they felt like he wasn't supporting us. Like a lot of times he just wasn't there. He wouldn't be at meetings. He didn't check in on the team. And we didn't feel like he was our advocate. So when I started to realize that it wasn't just me and that there were multiple people in the department that were going through this, I felt like I had to do something. I've always kind of felt that in my career, that if there's something that's going on that's affecting other people and no one has the confidence to stand up, I got to be the one to stand up. I think I learned that from my dad. I heard so many stories of him, during his career, where he stood up and said something that was on everybody else's mind and had the confidence to do it. So I thought I needed to do that. But I hadn't really done this at this level before. So I was nervous. So, hey, I did what I just told you guys about. I started practicing with my wife. I came up with really specific examples, got it all set up in my mind, ready to go. I was going to bring to his attention his lack of support, his lack of advocacy, and his lack of information sharing. So I remember I have a one-on-one with him every Tuesday, and it was like the last 5 minutes of our one-on-one. And basically I said, hey, and I won't use his name, but I said, hey, Greg, I'm hoping we can schedule some time to chat later this week. There's something that's been kind of going on. You may have noticed I haven't been myself recently, and it's because I've been a little bit down about some of the things that have been happening within the team. And he kind of gave me a weird look and was like, well, what is this about? And I said, if it's okay with you, I'd really love to, have a chat with you in a couple of days, right? I wanted to give him some time to process it. I wanted to make sure, again, that I was totally prepared, ready to go. So the day of the conversation comes, I should say, and I went into it. I started by saying, hey, thank you by the way, for putting some time on the calendar. And by the way, thank you for even being willing to hear what's on my mind. I have a couple of pieces of feedback that I wanted to give you, Greg. The first one is I have felt, and my department has felt, that you're really not there to support us. You don't really show up to the calls. Last Tuesday, for example, you said you were going to be there. You weren't there. And I know a lot of the team feels like they haven't talked to you in the last 6 months that you've been our, VP. And I know the team and myself is feeling like we're not really getting that support that we need. And then I paused and said, do you have any questions about that? He didn't have any questions. He just took some notes and kind of nodded along. So then I went to the next one and I said, hey, Greg, the next thing I wanted to bring to your attention was the lack of information sharing. And here are 3 or 4 different recent examples. And I went through recent examples of where I wasn't given the information that I know he had. And you could tell his reaction was a little, I don't want to say he didn't say anything defensive, but he looked defensive. He crossed arms and kind of, looked a little angry. And I got to tell you, I'm nervous as heck during this moment, right? My stomach is in knots. I'm like, just get through it, Austin. You can do this. You got one more. Again, I pause and I say, hey, are there any kind of questions? Do you want me to elaborate on anything? No. Nodded his head, kept moving on. And then I went into the last one where I said, hey, and to wrap up, Greg, the last thing I think that, has really been, I'm struggling with and things that have been on my mind is I don't feel like you're my advocate. And here are 2 examples of how I don't think you've been my advocate recently. And I went through those examples and again, paused and asked him if he had any questions. And he didn't have any questions. To his credit, he took notes, he nodded. I wrapped up by saying, thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat. I'm always here if you have any questions or we want to get further clarification. And we stood up, I shook his hand, and we walked out and went our separate ways for the rest of the day. And I felt really, really good. When I left that room, there was such a big weight off my shoulder. I let out a huge sigh of relief. I felt like I had done something and I had said what's on my mind. And there's really something special about speaking what's on your mind. For years and years and years, I was a huge people pleaser. Right? I'm a recovering people pleaser, but for years, I just felt like I needed to never rock the boat or say anything that could offend anyone, even if it was my truth, even if it was something that was bothering me, even if someone had wronged me. So I remember thinking in that moment how good it felt to kind of break from the chains of people pleasing and really stand up for myself, stand up for my department. And I'm hoping that story kind of shows you the power of giving feedback. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel out of your comfort zone, but you're going to feel really, really good having done something that's hard. And you're going to feel really, really good and proud of yourself for trying something you didn't think you could do. So what I want to do is give you guys a challenge. And so the challenge is this. If you have a boss that you're working with that has been doing something that's been bothering you, I want you to go up to them this week and see if you can put some time on their calendar to have a conversation. Quit hoping it will go away. Quit hoping they're going to figure it out. Quit being in denial. Get rid of the regret. Go have the conversation. You are not going to regret doing this. You will regret not doing it. You're going to resent them. It's going to make the relationship worse. Get it out of the open. Have that direct, uncomfortable conversation and watch what happens. You're going to grow. They're going to grow. And hopefully it's going to make the working relationship much better. So before we wrap up, what I want to do is I want to transition and tell you guys a little bit about something I'm pumped about. So I mentioned during the last episode that STS Coaching is officially live. So exciting over the last couple of weeks. Me and my business partner, Kyle, are just having a blast. We've been chatting with clients, working with clients to get them to where they want to go in their career. So what I wanted to do today is give you guys a highlight of something that I think is a little bit different about our coaching business versus all the other career coaching businesses out there. So you probably, if you type in the word career coach, what you'll pop up is a lot of folks that are going to help you write a resume and help you get a new job. That's what they claim. They're going to help you write a resume, stand out, get a new job. I think those things are amazing. And that's definitely something that at STS Coaching we can help with. We can make sure that you market yourself effectively through LinkedIn, that you get the right connections, that you stand out in the sea of people applying. But that's not what we're focusing on. We're not focusing on writing a good resume. There are so many different platforms and programs that can write a resume for you. Really what I think makes STS Coaching different is we're acting as your partner within your career. So there are these moments, just like talking about giving your boss feedback, that you're going to have these moments in your career where you don't know what to do. that you're not sure if you're taking the right move, if you're making the right decision. Maybe it's a big presentation you have at work. Maybe it's an interview that you're preparing for. Maybe it's giving your boss feedback. Maybe it's firing someone, whatever it is. There's going to be all these different things that happen in your career that we're there to help for. So what I want to do is tell you about something that I'm really excited about, which is called Coaching on Demand. Coaching on Demand is this kind of new way of offering career coaching. And really what it is it gives you personalized on-demand advice and guidance when you need it. So I don't know about you, but there are these moments that pop up in my career. And sometimes they pop up like that. And I wish I had a mentor, someone I could talk to, someone who is an expert in these things to give me advice and to tell me, hey, you're thinking about this the right way, or no, you're not thinking about this the right way. And really that's what Coaching on Demand is. So you get access to Kyle and myself, text and email support. So text us a question, you're going to get a response within 24 hours. Send us an email, you're going to get a response. We're going to show you exactly how to approach that situation. We're going to reaffirm if you're thinking about it the right way. And so what I really think is interesting about that is you're getting the advice and guidance when you need it, how you need it. So some folks don't want to have an hour-long conversation every month. They want to just get help when they need it. And this is a perfect program for folks like that. So with Coaching on Demand, you also get some cool things. You do get one initial coaching session. You get the text and email support, as I mentioned. As well, you get guided exercise. So Kyle and myself have spent hours and hours and hours refining and creating what I think to be some of the best exercises to help you discover, grow, and navigate. So those are our core 3 pillars at STS Coaching. Is we want to make sure folks discover what makes them unique, their values, the things that are important to them. We want to help them grow by creating really good, smart goals that are aligned with what their values are, help them stay accountable, and then we want to help them navigate. So we want to make sure that they have the resources, the content to navigate their career. So the other 2 things that you get with Coaching on Demand is you also get personalized content recommendations. So what does that mean? There is so much on the internet. There are thousands of books, hundreds of thousands of podcasts. There are blogs and TED Talks, and the internet's big, right? And I don't know about you, but there's been so many times where I didn't know where to start. I didn't know the best leadership books to read. I didn't know what podcasts I should be listening to get better at sales. Well, that's where we take the guesswork out of it. Every month, if you're part of the Coaching on Demand and our other programs, you're going to get personalized content recommendations. So you're going to tell us exactly the type of content that you want, the type of things, how you absorb your content. Do you like to watch? Do you like to listen? Do you like to read? And then in your inbox every month, you're going to get personalized content that's exactly what you're looking for to get you to that next step in your career. So I'm really excited about that. And then as well, you get access to our monthly newsletter, which is basically a breakdown of all the different kind of coaching strategies we have, new topics related to business, to leadership, along some other cool things as well. So I wanted to give a highlight on Coaching on Demand. I'm really excited about it, and we've been getting a ton of responses that people are really excited about this kind of new way of doing career coaching. So I'm also excited to announce that if you're a listener to the podcast, I got a little sneak peek, a little something fun for you. If you decide to sign up for Coaching on Demand or our full service coaching, we're going to give you a discount, 25% off for anybody who's listening to the Introvert Leader podcast. Send me a message, check out our website at sts-coaching.com, or send me an email, and I'd love to give you some information, see what we can do to help you get your career to the next level. Maybe you want to make more money, maybe you want to have a better work-life balance, maybe you want to have the confidence to communicate effectively at work. All of these different type of things, we're here to help. We're excited to officially be live. And again, I want to say thank you so much for listening. Make it a great day. This has been the Introvert Leader Podcast. Subscribe for new episodes every other Wednesday.